very briefly how, in the wake of Alexander's conquests, after the yoking of East and West, there arose a great need for personal savior gods, which had not really had much importance to men and women before this point. There arose this dual notion, which hadn't existed. This notion of a mortal body and an immortal soul, which after death could either stew as a gibbering shade in Hades for all eternity, or which could achieve some sort of beatific afterlife among the gods through salvation. For over 11 centuries, Eleusis had buttressed the hopes of Greek-speaking men and women until its sanctuaries were sacked by a train of fanatical Christians following Alaric in 396 AD. And this quasi-shamanic model for mass ritual salvation, as I understand it, was exported from Greece and syncretized with countless local traditions in the wake of Alexander's conquests. There were definitely mystery traditions at work before this in Egypt and Syria and Persia and so forth, but here's where they all start getting Hellenized, or Eleusinianized, and thus internationally popular. Eleusis' influence with its experiential Orphic gospel could be seen in Egypt, in the cults of Queen Isis and Lord Osiris, among foreigners in Greece, in the cults of Mother Cybele and her lover Attis, and of course, even in the initiatic texts that would ultimately become the Gospels of Jesus Christ, whether the canonical ones or not. Over the thousands of years we've been covering together in our lecture series, there arose a sense that fellowship in suffering was a precondition to participation in the divine victory over death. Man shared in the suffering of God, and God in the suffering of man. People couldn't relate to cold and distant gods that, although they were anthropomorphic, they were above suffering. They couldn't share in the human condition. These sorts of figures, these Zeuses and these Athenas and these Apollos of the world, they would remain pivotal to Mediterranean art and culture and civilization, but over the centuries, their importance as personal spiritual guides began to dwindle. Even though they looked human, they entirely transcended the human condition. Osiris, Attis, and Jesus, however, did not. They were fully divine and fully human. They participated in the grand drama of human suffering. Their stories were a comfort to man in an uncomfortable universe. So, starting around this period, around the late 4th century, early 3rd centuries BC, the approach to religion for those of a more intellectual bend was toward the quote-unquote Gnostic path. The path which prized mystical experience far above the dry machinations of civic and family rituals. You know, just going through the motions because your friends and family are watching. In the well-connected, metropolitan, and syncretic atmosphere of the post-Alexandrian world, people craved experience, not dogma. Not a brand name with a logo and a specific and inflexible set of rules. Mystery cults were not at odds with one another. They were mostly thought of as various facets of a single truth. A truth which was apprehended by both the senses and by extrasensory means, by phenomena and by noumena. This was the truth of a universe which was self-similar across scales. A universe in which that which hangs above is just as that which lays below, wherein that which is within is just as that which is without. A universe of sympathetic magic, wherein just as the sun in the sky and the crops of the earth ran on an endless cycle of death and rebirth, so too did the divine spark within man. Man had but to learn, experience, and acknowledge this cycle to become a part of it. Man had to reconnect to a secret which he had lost with the rise of civilization. A secret which, for hundreds of thousands of years, had been purely intuitive, but by this point had become drowned out by the word. Man had confused the map with the territory. He became lost in the image and ignorant to the unmasked reality within and around him. And it was these cults, typically started up by a single initiator, who took it upon themselves to restore that ancient connection. This was done through sacred dramas or passion plays, much in the way modern Freemasons perform specific rituals for each grade of ascent through their ranks, at the center of which there lay a sacramental meal. The religiously sanctioned consumption of one or various substances consubstantial with the deity that could elicit a kind of beatific vision, a tearing down of that veil of words, behind which the initiate could, perhaps just for a few hours, see the world for what it really was, as William Blake put it, to see the universe in a grain of sand. Never since this period has there been an age in which the concept of cosmos was so consciously of import to mankind. A concept in which the unity of all life, the harmony of all nature, was so central to how one determined his or actions. This all ties into the rise of individualism.